Hi, I'm Melissa. This is the Vintage Garage Podcast. Today we're going to talk about the Chelsea Flea Market that closed this week. An article in the New York Times from December 30th outlines how the final day of the Chelsea Market was this past Sunday. This is inevitably, if you were an antique or vintage dealer and you met Andy Warhol, this is where you met him. This was an epic place, and there was also a market called the Garage there, which was where I was inspired to create the Vintage Garage in Chicago. This garage was in New York City, and they really stuck around a remarkably long time. It's definitely a niche that still is pretty hot in Chelsea, and I will say that when this market began or was running in the 80s and 90s, real estate was a little cheaper here. So it wasn't as hard to find a place that was empty on a Sunday that could be used. Today, real estate prices are so much higher, and if I'm not mistaken, this is one of the last markets in New York City that the Hell's Kitchen, that one still may be going on, but this one is done. Things are different today than they were in the 80s and 90s. Antiques and vintage was a really hot commodity. You had a lot of baby boomers decorating their homes, their giant homes, and they were very much into antiques and vintage. So things are shifting like they are with everything else in the world. The vintage industry and market isn't as strong as it was. And today it's a whole new ball game. If you are a vintage dealer and you're selling today and you did sell 20 years ago, then you know what I'm talking about. If you're new to the business, generally I'm finding that it's a part-time side hustle, and not as many people are doing this full-time because they can't. I posted this in my Vintage Garage group on Facebook and said, how do we persevere here? Because it takes a village now. I mean, it truly, where these are all individual businesses that come together. And it used to be they would set up and operate within their booth and really not interact with anyone else. And the job of the vendor was to bring good stuff, set it up, sell it, and leave. The job of a promoter who runs a show like this was to bring in the people. Things have changed, and we absolutely have to work as a team. And I hear a lot about shows closing, and people really don't seem to understand why. And I'll tell you why. The costs are very high. The dealers are not making as much money as they once were. And I'll give you an example. I found my sales book from 2008. And it was, obviously before the market crashed and things kind of fell apart in 2008 and 2009. But we were pretty consistently having at that time $4,000 to $5,000 a weekend sales. And those kinds of shows are gone. And when you're making that much money in a weekend, you can afford to be at a show for a whole weekend. Now, because a lot of people are doing this part-time, they can't come and set up on a Friday and sell on Saturday and Sunday, pack up again, and then go to work on Monday. It just doesn't work that way. So when I created the Vintage Garage, for example, I made it a one-day show so that people could work within those parameters. So this is definitely a sad day. Sunday was a sad day, if that was the last day of the Chelsea Flea Market. And man, there's a lot of good memories there, and a lot of interesting stuff was found. So if you shopped the Chelsea Flea Market and you found amazing things, or you met somebody cool, please let me know. Share in the comments below, and thanks for listening. See you soon.